In this episode of the Awaken Podcast, we're exploring how to create more quantum leaps in your life and make that shift from a state of fear to faith into knowing. Every single one of us are going to be confronted with fear in different areas of our lives. We have our upper limits, our perceptions of what is or isn't possible, and it can really get in the way of us playing big and living more purposefully. So how we relate to our fears makes all the difference. We're going to explore the connection between your mindset, your nervous system, and your beliefs, how you can shift into a state of higher level flow and miracle creation. Let's get into the episode. I'm really excited for this one. And I just know that if you have a big goal that you're chasing in your life right now, this episode is going to help you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Awaken Podcast,
where we share practical spirituality for modern living.
Join us as we dive deep into conversations about healing and transformation.
Let's go.
Here we are.
Let's go.
All right, we are diving in. This is going to be a really juicy conversation today. We've got our hot drinks. I've got cacao.
I've got matcha today.
And we're going to take a moment to take a breath and set an intention for the conversation.
Let's go.
All right.
Closing down your eyes and taking a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. So what's your intention today, Hella?
My intention is to have fun and create a space of inspiration.
Same. Yeah, I want to have fun and I want to create a space of inspiration too. And I want to bring the vibes. I want to allow my channel to open and just bring through whatever is meant to be brought through for the highest good. So
cheers to that.
Let's get it.
Okay.
Delicious. So we're talking about having a quantum leap from fear to faith to knowing. Let's define what a quantum leap is.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a quantum leap could be defined many different ways depending how deep you want to take it. But at an overview level, we can consider a quantum leap to be a sudden, unexpected, and really significant shift, right? It's something big and seemingly out of your control or power to create. It's larger than you. It's bigger than you. We all know when we've experienced a quantum leap because we're like, whoa, that was major, and you feel connected to a larger intelligence that's working on your behalf. I call it also co-creation. Quantum leaps occur naturally when we are in a state of co-creation and flow.
And alignment.
And the cool thing about it is that you work smarter instead of harder when you're quantum leaping. So you're taking aligned action. You're doing the things that you know that you need to do, but the results of those actions become so much greater than you because you're co-creating and things are showing up and being delivered. There's synchronicity, there's flow, there's serendipity. You know, this is where we're like, okay, life is magic and it's all working out for me.
Like you're blowing your own mind.
It's miracle season, you know, when we're in that quantum leap flow, miracles are showing up, they become normal. I believe that we are here to live in that state of flow where quantum leaping is normal. And so that's what this conversation is going to open up. How do we actually access that? And what mode of being do we need to adopt and embody in order for quantum leaps to happen?
Well, let's rewind, because it starts with something that we desire, something that we want. And the first stage is really owning what we want, because a lot of people won't even do that. They won't own what they want.
Let's unpack that more.
Well, if you don't own what you want, then you can't create it, full stop.
Exactly. And I can recall, if we go back in time, to many, many, many moments where you and I have had to go so deep into self-reflection work, uncovering what we actually want and realizing that we've been kind of living in a state of denial. I mean, if I go all the way back, I remember when you and I met, and this is over 18 years ago now, I did not know what I wanted at all. And I was just settling for breadcrumbs in life in so many areas and being like, oh, that's fine. Like, just be grateful for what you have. There was a humility and this kind of down to earth gratitude that I had, which was helpful in many ways. But I didn't feel worthy of more. And therefore, I wasn't entertaining what I deep down actually wanted, because there was this block and this belief that it was too much to ask for and I wasn't worthy. And so I think even drilling into what we want, we have to confront the aspects of ourselves that don't go there or don't feel worthy, and look at any limiting beliefs or patterns or dynamics that are showing up that are in the way of that full expression.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about doing deep inner work, and a part of that is shadow work, right? And when we go into shadow work, there's the golden shadow. And the golden shadow represents the things that we deep down truly desire, but we haven't yet given ourselves permission to own that that's what we want to create. And for me, going all the way back 18 years ago, I knew what I wanted to create, but I didn't feel worthy of creating it. So therefore, I would sabotage myself. I would play small. I would hold back. I would hesitate. I would procrastinate. I wouldn't actually move forward, or I might move forward a little bit, but it was always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And there was always that yo-yoing kind of effect that was happening. And that's really frustrating when you're in that.
I think a major part of gradually unlocking what you actually want is giving yourself permission to, at the very least, surround yourself with people that you deep down do resonate with and are inspired by, and curate that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have those people in your life as close friends, or you have your dream business or clients or whatever it may be. But you can start, because of this gift that we have of the internet, by watching the podcasts from those people that you resonate with or following them, and then cutting out the weeds. So anyone that you don't resonate with, anyone that you recognize as a part of an outdated version of yourself, unfollow, unsubscribe. Start to feed yourself on a daily basis with things that reflect to you who you're becoming and what feels like you, even if it feels far away, like there's this massive gap. Because I know that feeling so well. I know you do too, where you're surrounded by that energy of what's possible, but you're like, oh, I'm not that. And this is where the imposter syndrome can come in, or just straight up self-sabotage, where we're like, I can't even want that. I just admire that they have it. And can we then take it a step further to entertain, look, there might be a journey ahead of you, a lot of work that's required for you to embody your own version of that, but it's possible.
And recognize that it's not just food that we're digesting on a daily basis. We're also digesting information. We're digesting conversations. We're digesting the things that we're watching. So if you're watching things that aren't actually supporting your growth, then that's a really beautiful place to start, is clearing the distractions. And like you said, starting to practice surrounding yourself with people who are on the same wavelength as you, who want the same things as you, who have the same values as you. And when you start to do that, you get these reflections of what's possible, which is really cool.
Here is another important part of this. No one embodies the exact blueprint of who you're becoming. So I think sometimes we can get confused when we're looking for this clear-cut example of what we're meant to be, and we can't find it outside of ourselves. You're not meant to, because you're unique, and life is going to give you a buffet of reflections of aspects of yourself, but you're going to pull it together into your own unique recipe. I think there's nothing wrong with being inspired. We don't want to outright copy people, but we can receive so much inspiration from surrounding ourselves with the right people, and then know that you're going to create your own unique recipe, and it's going to be a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that thing over there. And suddenly it just makes sense. But a part of crossing the threshold or journeying from where you are right now to where you want to be is knowing that it's not going to make sense to the current version of you. It's not necessarily going to be crystal clear what you even want. you're going to have to trust and adopt faith, which we'll talk about in a moment, in the process of it getting clearer and clearer and clearer. And whatever you need to know now is enough for you to start taking action and moving on. Like you're going to get more and more feedback and you move on that. And then it weaves together in the most perfect way.
Yeah, or maybe you know exactly what you want, but there's a lot of work to put in to create that.
And I would even argue that you might think you know exactly what you want, but you don't.
Yeah, most likely it will change over time. And that's the process of growing through these things that we want, these desires that we have. So you have a desire, you have something that you want. And then for all of us, when we're stretching ourselves outside of our comfort zone, then the voice of fear and the voice of self-doubt and resistance will naturally arise, because that's a part of the game of challenging ourselves to move outside our comfort zone, because our survival programming prioritizes what's comfortable, familiar, and safe over what's uncomfortable and unfamiliar. So therefore, we have to come up against our own programming. And that usually comes up through the voice of fear, self-doubt, and resistance. So if you're experiencing that right now, if you have a goal, if you have something that you're working towards, I just want to remind you that that's normal. And we all experience that, each and every single one of us. And that's just a part of the game. But it doesn't have to slow you down or stop you from moving forward. And I think this is where the conversation becomes really important, because a lot of people stop there. They get paralyzed in fear. So let's talk about moving from fear to faith to knowing, and what that actually means and how people can start to apply that in their lives.
Yeah, this is good. It's so juicy and important, because I know that this process that we're talking about is everything that we've lived through, and you don't live through it just once. It's again and again and again, and you get better at it. And here's the cool thing. If you zoom out, you become more comfortable and embodied in the knowing that moving from fear to faith to knowing is the way. But when you have never done that before, you're like, I can't do this and I don't know where to go and how to process it. So zooming in for a moment, let's talk about the fear and how we can start to, work through it and transform it. I think the first thing is simply to acknowledge that it's there, because it's a blind spot for so many people. And fear can show up in really sneaky, subtle ways. And what we see with so many of the clients that we work with is fear shows up in our more primal stress responses. So we might not experience fear as a conscious emotion. We're not sitting there being like, oh, I'm so afraid right now. But we notice that we sabotage. We notice that when it comes to doing that thing that we want, we get really tired, or we suddenly become avoidant, or it becomes really stressful. These feelings that don't look like fear on the surface are actually driven by fear. And if you can make that connection and go, oh, I'm feeling threatened or unsafe right now, and my system is trying to protect me from something by getting distracted from the goal that I said that I want, then you have something that you can work with. So like foundational level 1, get curious and recognize where you feel threatened and afraid subconsciously.
How I experience it personally is resistance.
Okay.
So resistance will come up, and
which is a form of avoidance.
Yeah, and I won't want to do the thing that I know will support me to get the results that I want. So I know what to do and I know the action I should take, but there's resistance there.
Give us an example.
I'll give you a really grounded example where it's shown up for me so many times, which is in my workouts. It's in my health and fitness goals. It's when I'm challenging myself to access a new level in that area. I might have a fitness plan. I might have my nutrition dialed in. I know exactly what to do, but knowing what to do is one thing, and then sticking to the plan is another thing. So on those days where I have to say limit my calories or I have to train really hard, because that's what the plan entails, I know what to do, but I have resistance. And I have resistance because my survival programming is kicking in and it's trying to keep me in the familiar. It's trying to keep me safe. It's trying to keep me in my known reality, aka my comfort zone. And right now, this fitness program and this nutrition plan is stretching me. It's challenging me to move beyond my comfort zone. So that's how it usually shows up for me, with a lot of resistance. I know what to do, but there's the resistance around doing that. How do you personally experience it?
Oh, I can relate to that for sure. I mean, anyone who identifies as having an ADHD type of attention span, whether you have a diagnosis of ADHD or not, I'm sure you're familiar with the experience of just completely tuning out and getting distracted and not having that ability to stay with something that you said you were going to do or do it on time. It's like you'd rather do anything but that all of a sudden.
So that's a key piece, because people at home listening might not have recognized that that's their survival programming. Your survival program will distract you and hijack your attention and make you focus on irrelevant things that aren't actually aligned with your goals. So it will have you wasting your time.
What's really interesting that I've noticed too is that sometimes I'm being protected from a sensation that I don't really want to feel, a sensation that feels very uncomfortable. And with the work that we do, going into more of a somatic approach of processing people's resistance and fear and discomfort and not feeling safe, what we realize is that the body is often protecting us from sensations. And we can get quite dramatic, whether we're conscious of it or not, about these sensations. For example, if you were to give your body a voice, it might say something like, I cannot feel that. I don't want to let myself feel that. If I feel that, I will not be okay. And it could get way more dramatic than that. Like, if I feel this, then I will die. You know, it's not okay. I cannot feel that. I cannot tolerate this feeling. I'd rather do anything but that.
So this isn't happening within our conscious mind. This is happening at the level of our survival programming and our nervous system and our body, which is a key to know.
And our capacity to be with stress varies widely from one individual to the next. Some people have a very low stress tolerance, which means that perception of threat fires much more quickly or easily than other people. And this is where cultivating resilience comes in, and doing the hard things. Actually, fear is the way a lot of the time, because when you start to develop safety with uncomfortable sensations, your body is less likely to kick off and go, no, we cannot do this, distract, go unconscious, go into an autopilot response. You need to train yourself to stay conscious and in the driver's seat of your own nervous system and choices, rather than, completely going rogue and going into a distraction. This is where coping mechanisms and addictions come in, and people get so frustrated. Why do I keep doing this thing that I said I don't want to do? It's because we're not addressing the underlying driver, which is to remain safe and to avoid certain sensations or experiences that the body-mind system deems as unbearable and not okay.
Yeah, it all really does come back to safety, and it could be quite abstract for people to understand this. So I want to really ground this down now.
Yeah.
So you can have a conscious desire, something that you want to create, something that you want to manifest, something that you're actually genuinely excited for. But your subconscious mind is way more powerful than your conscious mind. It's 95% more powerful. It's running the show. So if your subconscious mind and your beliefs aren't on board with what you say you want, then your body's going to unconsciously resist it. So that's when we get into these patterns of what we're talking about that end up running the show, fear and self-doubt and resistance. They're coming up because your body and your nervous system isn't on board and aligned with what you want, aka it doesn't feel safe to create it, to bring it to life and experience it. So it's protecting you from that experience, because that experience to your body, to your nervous system and your survival programming is a threat.
And it's amazing how much acknowledging these things can actually shift it for you. So some people might be listening and going, this sounds complicated and hard. And now I'm realizing it's a whole different level of difficult to make this shift because it runs so deep in my programming. So how on earth am I ever going to get to it? Bringing conscious awareness to it is the first step. And getting curious, just allowing yourself to explore with curiosity and non-judgment. What am I actually feeling truthfully? Because sometimes we are lying to ourselves, and the core belief, the limiting belief, let's say, of fear and self-preservation is just right beneath the surface. It's very close. And we can be like, no, I do want it. I do want my goal. Like, for example, with fitness or something, I do want to work out. Like, how could you say that I don't want to work out? I do want to work out. Okay, can we just get really, really real for a moment and drop the idea of how you think you should be and just get honest with yourself about what your resistance is actually wanting and choosing instead? And maybe that is just simply, I don't want to be pushing myself because it feels stressful.
Yeah, for a lot of people also this will come up in the form of excuses. Like people will have a goal, something they want to create, and they know what they need to do. They have a clear plan, and then they talk themselves out of it. Or they have an excuse of, I'm not going to do this today. They'll put in the bare minimal effort in the moment. And a lot of the time that's because of what you said around self-preservation. The body starts to get tired and go into these shutdown states when you're trying to take bold action and all of a sudden you're tired, you're yawning, you don't have the energy or the capacity to do that. And that's really important to recognize that your body's starting to go into the freeze response, into self-preservation and shut you down because on some level, unconsciously, it perceives those things as a threat. So it's always coming back to safety.
Yeah.
What you said around for a lot of people listening, it might sound really abstract and hard. If we can ground everything down to one word, and that's finding safety, safety in your body, safety in your nervous system, safety with your goals, with your desires. It's all about safety. If you just let that land and let that sink in, because once you find safety around the things that you want to create, meaning that your nervous system and beliefs are on board and aligned with what you want, then it becomes possible. And to close the gap and actually access safety in the body, that's where the tools come in, like breath work and somatic practices and the things that you've been speaking into around curiosity and connecting with your body and asking your body questions. Because when we're curious and we know what our body's truly responding to and how it's responding, then we can make a shift. You know, that information can allow us to regulate ourselves in the moment. It's like, okay, I'm going to go take this action, and all of a sudden my body's starting to shut down. I'm getting tired. Okay, that means my body's perceiving a threat. I'm in the freeze response right now. Okay, I'm going to self-regulate through my breath. I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge how I'm feeling in my body. What sensations are present? Is there any thoughts or stories that are limiting and disempowering in nature? Okay, are they true? And just going through the process of curiosity and checking in with yourself. And then all of a sudden your energy comes back online and you can move forward and actually take the action because you've grounded yourself, you've regulated yourself, and now your body feels safe to move forward.
Yeah, this is so important. What you're describing, the resistance is not the end destination or the end of the story. It's something that you get to meet and you have choice. And I love how you're describing the curiosity and then bringing in the breath, because before you go into any more complex tools, the very foundation is your breath and your self-talk. And in any moment of the day, you and I do this every single day. We're aware, we're tracking how we're feeling, how we're responding both mentally and also physically to what's happening in the day. And then when needed, when we notice that stress response comes up, which it does inevitably in situations, you meet it with awareness and curiosity and take a moment, like go outside, go and get curious and just put your hands on your body, or if you're in the middle of a situation where you need to be in action, bring your focus to your breathing and start to shift your inner dialogue. A lot of the time I notice that for me, it's shifting gears from fear and drama and catastrophizing, thinking about worst case scenarios, into being my own coach and best friend and encourager and learning to self-regulate. That's where the shift happens, and going, okay, you're feeling stressed out, resistance is coming up. I'm noticing that you're getting tired. You are safe. You're okay. You have got this. Let's take a break. Like, let's give it a moment, or you can do this. And then bringing the focus to the breathing. The breath is the foundational signal that we can offer up any time of the day to let the body know that you're safe. When you're breathing in a shallow way, your body is registering stress. When you deepen your breath and you slow down your breath, your body is going to register a greater sense of safety. And so, simplest thing ever, if you're stressed out, you're resistant, you don't feel safe, slow down your breathing and up-level your inner dialogue.
Exactly. Breathing deep down into your lungs, expanding your belly on the inhale, and a nice soft exhale out through your mouth. And coach yourself through the process, because the voice of fear and self-doubt will drain your energy. It drains your creative energy and your vitality and your life force. So like you said, the self-talk helps so much. But if you're not aware of what's happening in the moment and how your body's feeling and responding, then you just get caught in the loop. And a lot of people stay in that loop because they haven't practiced being aware of how they're feeling, or they're not willing to look at it, or they're even afraid to practice being curious. But our power lies in being aware of how we're feeling, knowing that we have the power to make a shift in the moment. Your survival programming will have you focus on what's wrong or what's missing or what could go wrong, and that just drains your creative energy. But if you are aware of that's what I'm doing right now, I'm draining my own life force by the way I'm thinking, then you can start to create a shift, like you said, through your self-talk and practicing more empowering ways of speaking to yourself and bringing in positive affirmations. And I want to talk about this really quickly and just land the plane.
Yeah,
positive affirmations aren't just speaking kindly to yourself or saying positive words. You're practicing neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself. And the more you do this over time, then your body starts to create new neural pathways of that belief. And then your RES, your reticular activating system, starts to search for and find more evidence to back up what you believe. So if you believe that I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I don't have what it takes, or whatever the limiting story is that's draining your energy, then your RES is going to look for evidence to back that up. And that's going to be disempowering. It's going to drain your energy and your life force. And it's going to keep you in the loop. But if you start practicing believing in yourself, then your RES is going to start searching for evidence of that belief, because whatever we believe becomes true for us. So that's the power of this work. You're not just speaking kindly to yourself. You're starting to rewire your brain and open up to what's actually possible. This is about unlocking your potential.
100%. And I can tell you all that I did not believe this earlier on in my personal development. I didn't believe in affirmations. I thought that they were just fluffy statements that sounded good. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that they do work, and you can rewire your brain. My thoughts, if you were to actually go into my head and if we could play the soundtrack of my thoughts 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it's gradually changed. And it's gone from being very, very self-destructive and honestly abusive to very supportive and safe. And this is a trippy thing for a lot of people to actually get. You need to work on becoming a safe space for yourself. And many of us are not that. We have internalized the very thing that we dislike or blame in other people. You know, we point the finger out and go, my parent didn't do this. They didn't show up for me. My friends didn't support me in the way that I needed. Society doesn't understand me. Whatever the thing is that we blame. And then we do it to ourselves 10 times more, 100 times more. No wonder we feel stuck and uninspired and our energy is low. And it feels like this constant uphill battle to create what we want.
Yeah.
You've got to work on gradually becoming a safe space for yourself, for your soul to come through and actually voice and reveal those dreams so that you can get on with being like, okay, I am here working for my soul as the human vessel to bring that to life.
Yeah.
And that's how you and I live now. Like, we are in service to the Most High. We're connecting on a daily basis to what our inner guidance is wanting to bring through, and then being like, okay, well, that's my job today. That's my work. And of course I'm going to do it. It's like the highest honor of my life. It's so fun. And what we can start to unpack and talk about now is when you build evidence that you are supported and this higher vision that's coming through is a safe voice to listen to. You can trust your soul. Life starts to really unlock, and this is where the quantum leaps happen, and you become unrecognizable. And I can tell you all, we are unrecognizable. If you were to bring the me or the you in from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20, whatever, so different. We have shifted so much. And it's because of this work that we're talking about, gradually shifting the inner dialogue, becoming our own best friend, transforming the fear into faith, building a connection to that soul level of guidance, and then taking bold, aligned action and closing the gap. So let's start talking about how that looks. How do we start moving into faith-based living as an initial starting point, right? And why would we want to do that?
Yeah, the first thing I started to recognize within my own mind is my mind has two different operating systems. And one is the survival mind, and that's what we've been talking about. It's the fear-based thinking that keeps us looping in the same old familiar patterns. And then there's the creative mind, which is connected to our intuition, to our inner knowing, to belief and faith. And we can be oscillating between both. But a lot of the time, we just stay stuck looping in our survival mind. And what started to help me with switching over from my survival mind, from feeling stuck and looping in the familiar past, into my creative mind, was the process that we've been talking about, you know, being curious, understanding what's happening within my mind and body and nervous system, and self-regulation and breath work and self-talk and doing all of those things. And what would happen for me is I would start to process how I was feeling, and then I'd get a wave of creative energy, inspiration, ideas. And that's what you're speaking into when you're speaking about opening up to this more faith-based living, where you start to believe that what you want to create is possible, and you get inspired and you get creative ideas come online. So for me, the trust process has been huge. So you get a creative idea, some form of inspiration, and then you get to take aligned action on it. If you just put it to the side, if you don't take action on it, then again, that survival programming is running the show. But when you start to challenge the voice of fear and self-doubt and resistance, and you take aligned action on whatever it is that you know that you need to do next, then things start revealing themselves to you. So you don't need to have all of the answers or know all of your steps. You just need to know your next step. And as you take your next step, then more is revealed to you. And that's the faith piece. Because often when we're challenging ourselves to step outside our comfort zone and go for something that we've never done before, that fear will arise. and we can be paralyzed in it and we don't take the next step. But if we take the next step from a place of trusting our intuition and knowing that that's what we're meant to do, then more will be revealed to us. And that's how we live. And that's how we've been living for a long time. And now it's just innate. It's what we do. We just take action based on our inner guidance, and our inner guidance then will reveal the next steps. So we take action on that, then the next steps will be revealed. And before you know it, life is changing. With access to quantum leap, we're shifting in the areas that we want to shift in. It's because we're choosing to trust and have faith around our own inner knowing, around our own inner voice, and then to back that up with action. And when you back that up with action, then things start to change. But if your nervous system and beliefs aren't on board and aligned with what you want, then the action that you're taking is not necessarily going to be the thing that's going to be the breakthrough. Because whatever you want to create when you're in that state will be challenging, it will be hard, it might feel like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because your body doesn't feel safe to create it. So when you get your beliefs and your nervous system on board with what you want, then things can start to open up. You access flow states. Action becomes natural. You want to show up and take, aligned action on your goals because it feels good, and you start to create results. And then those results start to prove to you that whatever you want to create is possible. And that's the journey of moving from fear to faith to knowing. As the fear arises, practicing and embodying self-belief with the way that you talk to yourself, regulating your nervous system when the stress response comes up, creating the space to access your inner guidance and intuition so you can get clarity on your next steps, and then following through and taking aligned action. And that's the journey of moving from fear to faith to knowing. And it's a process. And it doesn't matter what area of your life where you want to create a shift or you want to access your next level. That's really the journey for all of us. And it gets to be fun. It gets to be exciting. Even in the moments where your body might not feel safe, that's an opportunity to just slow down and be in the present moment and do the work, And the work doesn't have to feel overwhelming. It can actually be fun, because what you're really doing is you're showing up for your younger self. You're showing up for your inner child. You're showing up for the parts of you that at one point in time haven't felt safe. And they've created these survival strategies, which were highly intelligent. They kept you safe in the moment, but they can also be the very thing now that's holding you back from creating what you want. So you get to show up for your younger self and your inner child in that moment, which is an honor. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think we're all motivated by different things, right? The soul level, the God level, it might resonate with some people. For some people, they might feel really inspired by connecting to their inner child and, doing it for their younger self. For others, it's more about doing it for people that you care about. Like, I want to do this for my kids, or I want to do this for the people that are going through this certain thing that I really resonate with. It's kind of all of the above at the end of the day, but tapping into those different levels can really help us to liberate anything that needs to be liberated, drop the stories, drop the prison that you've created that's clouding your essence. And when you speak about the inner child, one thing that I'm reminded of is the power of remembering who you were as a kid and who you were before you took on fear. Because children can be so uninhibited and freely expressed in so many ways. And of course, children have a lot to learn and figure out, and there's things that we evolve beyond. But your childlike essence also does reveal a lot about you that was perfectly formed, developed, and intact. Like, you didn't need to learn to be that by being here on this planet. You already had it. You already had it dialed in. You had it nailed. And we need to actually remember and give ourselves permission more than anything to become that. The other thing that's present for me right now that I want to touch on is this idea that we need things to be a certain way in order for us to have faith. And I would argue that that's not faith at all. That is kind of trying to trick the system and rely on having certainty before you make your next move. And this is the trap that I think a lot of people get caught up in. They get an idea and then they start looking for all the ways it's not going to work out. And it's not just fear, it's like logic and the known. And it becomes excuses. And one thing that you and I have done over the years that I think is a life hack is we move when we feel guided to, when it feels aligned, and then we figure out the how later. Like we allow it to be revealed as we continue showing up.
Yeah, oftentimes action creates clarity. So when you move forward, you gain clarity. And then that starts to open up the next piece. But if you don't move, then you just stay stuck and you don't have clarity. So taking action can create clarity.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to be a bit unreasonable, and life will invite you to stretch yourself to new levels in order to create something. And there's nothing more powerful than committing. You know, when you commit, the energy starts to move and the how starts to reveal itself and piece together. You don't need to wait for the how to commit. Sometimes the reverse is actually the way forward. So for example, I can think back on times where we've decided to upgrade our living situation. Like I remember when we had our first little apartment and it was $275 a week in New Zealand. This is way back. So small, humble. And then we decided that we were going to get an apartment that was $600 a week. And I remember we were like, how are we going to afford that? That's way out of our budget. That's a stretch. But we knew that we wanted the feeling of living in that type of apartment. And so we decided that we were going to go for it and figure it out. And what do you know? We did. And that became our new set point.
The feeling enabled us to raise our standards and generate more money.
Yeah. And I don't want to gloss over this and say that it was just all easy rainbows and butterflies, because we did have to step up and play a bigger game. And I remember a part of that was that I got a new job that paid me, I think, I don't know, like 5 times as much in a completely different industry. And this is the example of a quantum leap. I went from this minimum wage job where I wasn't satisfied, I wasn't happy or inspired. And I was like, okay, I need to level up. I'm going to do this course. I'm going to start preparing for this other career. I switched and my hourly rate, went up 6 times or something. And we're paying for the apartment and it becomes normal. And then that was like just the beginning of, I couldn't even imagine if we were to say our living costs now to that old version of ourselves, my head would have exploded because I wouldn't have been able to understand how. And so money is a great way for us to learn how energy works and how when you decide and you move with conviction, you go into a state of co-creation.
This is only possible though when you take radical responsibility for what you actually want.
Yeah.
Meaning you're willing to raise your standards and do what it takes, which requires real work. And a part of that real work is, again, looking at all the distractions. And if you're not creating the space to connect to your intuition, strengthen that connection, and receive guidance on your next steps, then that's a part of the work that you need to do to gain clarity. Because without clarity, you can't move forward. Once you're clear on what you need to do and the next steps that you need to take, then you can take those steps. You can challenge the voice of fear and resistance and self-doubt, and you can move forward anyway with the self-talk, while regulating your nervous system, while rewiring your operating system and getting things on board as you take aligned action. But if you don't have clarity, then you're just going to stay looping. You're going to stay stuck. And the number one reason why most people don't have clarity around their next steps is because they're not creating the space to go inward and to connect to their intuition. So I think that's a major key, is creating the space through a practice. And that's what we've been cultivating for the last 10 plus years, with Awaken, and doing what we do, sharing breath work and meditation and the somatic tools. Beyond releasing stress and tension and processing your emotions, it's a really powerful way to gain clarity and strengthen your connection with your intuition. And that's why we love our practice Awaken Daily, which is free. Anyone can do it. It's online. We'll put the link below. It's just something that you can commit to as a way to gain clarity and let go of anything that's in the way of what you actually want. It's like going to the gym. You don't expect to go to the gym once and get the results that you want, right? It takes time. It takes work. And it's the same with this type of work. You can't just show up once or every now and then and expect to get results. No, this is a daily practice that starts to regulate your nervous system. It starts to align your beliefs with what you want, and you start to strengthen your connection to your intuition so you can bring through clarity around your next steps. And the more you do that and the more you take aligned action on your intuition, then everything starts to move in a totally different way. So that's what it's been for us. And it's been a relentless practice of trusting ourselves and putting our money where our mouth is. Like if we get an idea, like being willing to invest in that idea, being willing to back it up.
Back it up with action, back it up with your word, back it up with your thoughts, back it up when no one's watching.
Yeah.
Back it up with action. If you imagine for a moment that there was a camera that was following you 24/7, and people were behind the camera and they were watching, would you still, hand on your heart, looking in the eyes, be able to say with conviction, yes, I back up what I say I want with my actions? Let's be really real, because if you're not, if you're kidding yourself, if you're in denial, if you're half in and you're half out, you're actually just wasting your own energy. It's better to get into that congruent, clear, convicted state where you're like, okay, this is where I'm actually at. Then you have something that you can work with. For example, you might be like, you know what? To be real, I have been saying I want it and I would want it, but I've been wanting it if it's easy. I've been wanting it if it doesn't require vulnerability or embarrassment or people judging me. I've been wanting it if fill in the blank. Sometimes we have a lot of unconscious conditions around what we say we want. And when it comes to the reality of actually doing it, the risk feels just way too high. So we self-sabotage. And then we get to tell ourselves this satisfying story. No, like it didn't work out for me. And it's not actually deep down a nice place to sit. It's very disempowering. But we cover that up with this subpar, mediocre kind of limbo land of being like, oh, well, it's not my fault and it's life happening to me. You got to get into alignment. Decide, align, tune in, take bold, radical responsibility and start like wading in that canoe, crossing, as Dr. Joe will call it, the river of change, or we could say it's like crossing the bridge or the chasm. You got to start moving toward what you want and saying, I claim it, I choose it, I desire it, this is what I'm going after, and figure it out along the way. So many of the people that you look up to are figuring it out along the way. And they might make it look more put together, but I can tell you, there's so many messy moments of vulnerability and failure and learning that go into anyone's success story. And you've got to be willing to sign up for the whole package in order to become that new version of yourself. You get shaped through the initiation. There's no way you and I would be who we are today, where we are today, without being willing to get uncomfortable, face off with our fears, and gradually through action and through life reflecting back to us in that co-creative dance, that when I act, when I tune in, when I go for it, the universe meets me halfway. And I am co-creating and life is working out for me. It's the best feeling ever, but we got to earn it. And the last thing that I personally want to share before we wrap up the podcast is that it's about gathering evidence, and that is what builds knowing. When you start to realize it worked out, and over there it worked out, and over there it worked out, and whoa, I'm changing, and this is actually working, you don't even need faith anymore. You have knowing. It shifts from a theory, a belief, into like, no doubt about it, it's facts. It's a knowing. This is how I live, and this is how the universe works. So we've got to be willing to work with those initiations, go through it, and know that it all works out.
Yeah, 100%. When you get into alignment and your beliefs and your nervous system are on board with what you actually want, then anything becomes possible. It's just a matter of timing because you're living in alignment with your desires. You're on the path. So therefore, like you said, that faith becomes a knowing that whatever you want to create is not only possible, it's actually on the way, you're doing it, and you're on the journey. So let's go. I'm excited for everyone tuning into this podcast. Let us know what's resonating. Let us know what you're declaring. We want to hear from you. What are you creating? What are you stepping into? What are you owning? What do you truly want? Put it in the comments. We want to hear from you. Speak it into existence. And then most importantly, back it up with action and get into alignment.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Awaken Podcast. We appreciate you so much. You can like it, you can share it, you can subscribe, and we'll see you for another episode really soon.
Let's go.